Things just got worse and worse and worse as the night went on. Again, valiant effort down the stretch for the Bucs. Just too little, too late. Let's go down and let's see what Coach Fletch and the rest of the crew has to say. And as always, go Bulls. So let's head into the locker room right now and see what the guys have to say about that one. Wow. Where do the Buccaneers go from here? What an incredible atmosphere. What a good win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They snapped a 7-game winning streak. How we feeling, Bucs Nation? It's time to party, baby.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Recher podcast. Happy Thursday to you and yours. Hope everybody is having a wonderful week. Lot to go on, obviously, tonight and this weekend. March Madness, and I'm not counting the first 4 games. I'm talking about when things really get crazy. That starts today. Cannot wait for that as well. We got the Valspar starting today. We've got the Saladino tournament final tonight. We also have hockey. We've got spring training baseball. We got a little bit of everything. What a great time to be alive. I want you to follow me on all social media platforms at Recher. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well. Shout out to Benny and Dave Terry and everybody out there. We got a great show for you lined up today, including Joey Knight that's going to join us from the Tampa Bay Times at 12:30 today. USF, Tennessee on the hardcourt tomorrow night. We got to support our Bulls. It's going to be a tough matchup with one of the blue bloods in college basketball, but if there was ever a time for USF to rise to the occasion, it would be right now. It would be amazing to see those ladies be able to get through the first weekend for the first time in program history. I'll be tuned in, and I hope you will be too. Also, at 1:30 today, staying with the Tampa Bay Times style, we got our guy Eddie Encina joining us for his weekly visit. We're going to preview that 3-game road trip that the Tampa Bay Lightning start tonight in Dallas, and we know how good the Dallas Stars are. So you have to look at this situation with Tampa Bay, with the Bolts. You see Toronto winning last night. This is an opportunity for them to really, with all those games in hand, not only win those games and maintain their position, but actually vault up to the top of the division. This may be one of the most important years for the Lightning to be able to get home ice advantage. And I know John Cooper will talk about it and say, like, oh, it's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. But it is. You just look at the record, the difference between the home and the away record for the Bolts. Very, very important for them to be able to get that home ice advantage, whether it's as the number 1 seed in the division, because you're probably not going to catch Washington for the number 1 overall seed in the East, or in that 2-3 matchup in the division. Whether it's against Toronto, whether it's against Florida, you want to make sure that you have games 1, 2, 5, and 7 at home. So it starts in games like tonight. You can't continue that down. And I know they've won a couple in a row, but we need to see them play like they did just prior to the 4 Nations break. And if they're able to do that, I think they'll be in good shape going forward. And let's not forget, as always, a big thank you and a big hello to our guy, Joe Boo. What's Joe Boo's lesson for today? I mean, I guess Joe Boo's lessons for today is, frankly, if something is going wrong in your life, make sure you keep a positive outlook and make sure that you don't let all the minutia that is boggling you down and making you feel like there's no bright future ahead, no happy days ahead. You're just kind of petering along at work. Just, go to the store, go get some meat, go get some Ortega's chips and salsa, go do your thing and enjoy your life. So Joe Boo, the man. Jake Cobian says if he's got the rum, somebody else has got the cigar. Yeah. Break your bad habits, break your bad vibes. Joe Boo here. Look at them big ass feet. Amazing. The hair looks fantastic. He's always here by my side, bringing me good luck. So shout out to my guy Joe Boo right here, buddy, right by my side to my left. It's kind of like, out on the field. He's like a middle infielder, right? I'm the shortstop. He's the second baseman, or I'm the second baseman. He's the shortstop, always leading off. But again, making sure you're doing your thing. And Joe Boo is that guy that is always there by your side, forgiving, forgetting. And as our guy Nelson says, Joe Boo always helps the dingoes. You got that right here, buddy. Joe Boo all day, every day. Frankly, one of One of my best friends right here, Jobu. The big ass feet. Again, follow me on all social media platforms at Recher, and like and subscribe on YouTube as well. We've been discussing this a lot when it comes to the Rays, right? About the issues with the stadium. And I can't tell you how many times that I answered that question about the stadium. We even spoke about it yesterday on the Beckles and Recher podcast. And if you've ever watched the Beckles and Recher podcast, again, every Wednesday around 3:05 over at the Dignitary Cafe, we spoke yesterday about the stadium and Stu Sternberg and the lack of trust and all that jazz. I mean, it's been beaten over the head time and time again. That's pretty much seemingly all that we talk about. But I think now's the time. It's March 20th, 2025. We're inching closer and closer and closer to opening day. And I think now's the time to turn the page. Now's the time, really, as we are now 8 days away from opening day against the Colorado Rockies. It's time to refocus our efforts and our passion to what is going on the field. It doesn't mean forget what happened. It doesn't mean forgive any of the transgressions from the people that are making the decision when it comes to this team. And I don't think if you support the Rays, it means that you're okay with everything that's happened with Stu Sternberg and the lack of the stadium deal going through. But I, for one, and I hope that you guys are on board with this, I hope you guys are not going to take this out on the players and the coaches on the field. See, at the end of the day, they need our support. They need us to be there for them. They need us to watch the games, watch the programs, looking at certain things, talking to guys like Ryan Pepio, talking to guys like Brady North, the assistant hitting coach, seeing Rich Hollenberg and Doug Wechter in the studio today filming their all access for the season. Don't be spiteful. I feel like that we see that too much in this country now, whether it's sports or not. If you disagree with certain things, there's so much hate that resonates with inside a lot of people. And they're just like, screw you, screw you, screw you. And they're just like, they hate on everything. It's okay to be able to have a little bit of an a la carte feeling towards certain things. You can still support the Rays and be vehemently unhappy with what Stu Sternberg has done with this organization. I don't think it's Kevin Cash's fault. Sure as hell isn't Eric Neander's fault. It ain't the players' fault for what's been going on. So let's direct our efforts, our affection towards supporting this team. And listen, unless another big news release comes out about the Rays Stadium, maybe it's something about the new investors. But right now, and from here on out, I really want to focus the majority of our Rays talk on the team and the product on the field. And I want to give you 5 guys. No, we're not talking about burgers, but I said that as soon as I said that, I got hungry. Am I the only person that now, whenever you say 5 guys, you think of burgers? I can't be the only person. Every single time I think about that freaking brown paper bag and the French fries and the freaking burgers and the peanut shells on the ground. Damn it, 5 guys. What a great thing to name your restaurant, because now every single time on the top of my head, I say 5 guys that think about burgers. But these are the 5 players that I am focusing on coming out of spring training and going into the season. The 5 Rays players that need to perform at a high level if this team's going to do anything in the division. And we know what else is going on in the AL East. We know what the Yankees are dealing with when it comes to their injuries, with Garrett Cole out for the season, Luis Hill being banged up, Clark Schmidt, what's the deal with him? We know that Giancarlo Stanton is hurt. We know they don't have Juan Soto. So, all right, are they a little bit of a wounded animal? I still think they're a lot better than people that are preying on their downfall are talking about. I don't necessarily trust Baltimore. You have Zach Eflin that, think about this. Everybody was saying how great Baltimore was and how great they were going to be. Zach Eflin wasn't even the ace here. The only way that Zach Eflin was the ace here was when 3 guys got injured. Now he's the ace of the Baltimore Orioles? Really? Okay, not scared of them one bit. Sorry. I know their bullpen's going to be better. They got a lot of young players, but unless they take that next step, all they are highly touted prospects. Not worried about that. Boston, I look at that team as they are so on one end of the spectrum or the other. they could be dynamite with Crochet and Bueller at the top of the rotation and some really, really good young players. They went out and got Alex Bregman. I think Boston is the team that may be the wild card. Not saying winning the wild card, but just be the wild card of the division. I'd be just as I wouldn't be surprised if they finish first, and I wouldn't be surprised if they finish last. That's just kind of how Boston has been the last 2 decades. They got as good as chance to finish, a World Series champion as they do finishing, with the top 10 selection in the draft next year. Toronto, not buying it one bit. They're just going to be spending all year long pining after Vladimir Guerrero Jr., wondering if he's going to resign. He's not. He's not staying up there. Not happening. He's going to go somewhere else. He's going to go to a different market. And, yeah, they're just going to be back to square one. I feel like where Baltimore is right now is where Toronto was 5 years ago. All these great young players, they're going to be so awesome. Look at this. Look at what they're going to do. Look at Kevin Biggio and Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Gurriel. They have all these legacy players whose fathers and grandfathers have played professional baseball all around the world. And what did it amount to? Jack shit. Nothing. Toronto did nothing. They didn't go to one World Series with this core, and they're going to lose these guys. And if I'm Baltimore, and if I'm a Baltimore fan, I'm thinking about the same thing. I'm looking at my young players as, prospects are great, but if you don't develop them and you don't put good pitching and good defense and good coaches around them and don't make good moves in the offseason at the trade deadline, it doesn't mean anything. The Rays are still going to compete and go deeper than you. The Yankees are still going to be there. It's just, baseball's funny. Your prospect is a great word that turns into a crappy word fast. And all of a sudden, those guys are getting closer to 30, and then that's it. Baltimore has to be very wary about that. No doubt about it. And then it comes to the Rays. These are the 5 guys that I look at for this team coming out of spring training. And it starts with number 1, Junior Caminero. This guy has the potential to be one of the best players in baseball. Potential. There's that word. Another scary word. If the Rays want to be successful this season, if they want to be a team that makes it to the playoffs and really gives them a chance to be a team that could be a factor in the postseason, this is the guy that has to lead the surge. Is that a lot to ask from a young kid? Yeah. Of course it is. But he's going to be on the front page of a lot of these, things that come out. There's going to be a lot of pictures. He's going to be on social media. We saw what he did in winter ball. And we had Mark Topkin on yesterday speaking about how Albert Pujols just continued to heap praise on Junior Caminero. You saw when he hit that deep home run to center field, the high bat flip, everybody down there saying how great this kid was going to be. That's fine. But now you got to do it over a 162-game season when you're smack dab in the middle of this lineup and pitchers know that you're the guy. You're the straw that's going to stir the drink when it comes to this Rays lineup. If Tampa Bay is going to do anything this year, and I know you can say this about pretty much any club, but for a team like the Rays that aren't going to be able to have multiple guys inside the lineup that make $20, $25, $30 million, your best players have to be the best players. They have to be at their best for the majority of the regular season. And it starts with Junior Caminero. And there's such a trickle-down effect with his production and his ability that if he plays well, I think you'll see other guys in the lineup really raise the level of their game. And we'll talk about a couple of them here. But he is a dude that can really set the tone for how people view this lineup. If he starts slow, this team could be in trouble. And we saw it last year. We saw it last year with Yandy Diaz and Randy Arozarena. My dad was asking me about Randy Arozarena yesterday. He goes, I can't believe the Rays got rid of him. Because for the majority of baseball fans around the country, the lasting impression of Randy Arozarena is what he was able to do in the 2020 postseason, where he was putting up numbers that were comparable to Babe Ruth. Not Manny Ramirez, not Derek Jeter or Bernie Williams, not any of these guys that have long-term postseason success, Dustin Pedroia, Mookie Betts, all these guys. No, Babe Ruth, 100 years ago. That's what Randy Arozarena was doing. But he never got back to that kind of lofty expectation that a lot of people thought after that playoff run. And you saw at the beginning of last season how poor Randy and Yandy were. Not good enough. And for a team dealing with injuries, for a team that lacked a lot of other offensive weapons, they were unable to compete and stay in the hunt. They were right around 500. They'd get closer. They'd go on a little bit of a run. Then they lose a couple. It was such a back and forth start and stop season in 2024. But you remember a couple of years ago when they were, 13-0? You remember Wander Franco and Yandy Diaz and Randy Arozarena and all those good players, all their top players rising to the occasion, putting the team on their back. It was almost a different guy every night coming up with the big hit. But it starts at the top. Your best players. The cream has to rise to the top. I don't care how old he is. It's not going to matter. Junior Caminero is going to be penciled in every single day at the hot corner at third base. Every single day in the middle of that lineup. If he starts slow, the Rays offense is going to struggle. That's all it is. My number 2 player to watch coming out of spring training is Shane McClanahan, the ace for this team. So terrible to not see him on the bump last year for Tampa Bay. And I got a chance to talk to him last summer or before last season. And he really wanted to come back, and it just didn't make sense. So he's back, toeing the rubber. He's going to get that start 8 days from now. He'll be the first guy trying to lead the Rays to a victory. Now, his importance is slightly different than a guy like Junior Caminero. If Junior doesn't perform well or he gets banged up, right, it's a precipitous drop-off and your depth gets crushed. His is slightly different. When I say his, I say Shane McClanahan, because we know that there's 6 starters for 5 spots for this team. But for Shane McClanahan, being a true ace, this isn't a de facto ace. This isn't we just call him the ace because he's the first guy in the rotation. This isn't an ace because you hope that he's an ace or because he's trying to fulfill a high draft status. No, this is a guy that started the freaking All-Star game. This guy is legit. He's one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. So for Shane McClanahan to take the ball every 5 days is a huge plant your flag in the ground. We are here with one of the best pitchers in baseball. Good luck trying to even touch the ball when he's on the mound. There has to be a bulldog mentality from the starting staff. There has to be that mindset that they're going to go deep into ball games. I don't want to see the 5 and dive this year. You have enough starters to go out there and to go through the rotation a couple of times, especially with Shane McClanahan. I don't care if it's 4th time through the lineup. I don't care how good your bullpen is. And there's going to be good bullpen guys, and I understand that. But even at pitch 90, I trust a guy like Shane McClanahan. His performance is pivotal and crucial to the team's success this year. Back on the offensive side for number 3, Josh Lowe. Josh Lowe is one of those guys where going into last season, I don't want to hear any more about the potential of Josh Lowe. I don't want to hear any more about he could do this or if he could only do this. He's just got to do it. Just go out there and do it. This isn't a Joe Tryon-Shoyinka situation where he's never shown it. Yes, I get it. He's shown it a little bit, but he's got to stay healthy. And when he's not healthy and he misses some time, he's got to be able to come back and get right back to it. Too many times in sports, we give guys I don't want to say a pass, but we're okay with him not performing to a level because he's dealt with injuries. I understand that's part of the game, but you got to be able to bounce back. You got to be able to get in there and contribute to the offense and contribute to the winning in different ways. And that's what Josh can do. Not just hitting home runs. He can steal bases. He can play good defense. He can put the ball in play. He really is a 5-tool player. I don't want to hear anything more about the potential of a Josh Lowe this year. I just want to see him play. I want to see him play for 140 games. I want to see him bat near 280, 290. I want at least 20 home runs, at least 85 RBIs, 25 steals. I want a guy that's a pain in the ass to go against if you're a pitcher. a guy that not only can pull the baseball, but go the other way. When Josh Lowe is at his best, there's no pitcher that can get him out because he does a great job of changing his approach. Early in the count, he's hunting. He's hunting for a ball that he can drive to right center field. Opposite field, he's going to let the ball get deep and he's going to go the other way. But for Josh, when he's trying to change his swing too much, and you can see he's really thinking up there, that's when he struggles. I need to see a better Josh Lowe this year. And if he's better, the Rays offense is going to be better. Number 4, Pete Fairbanks. And I know his velocity in his most recent outing was much better, 97, 98. We speak a lot about the bullpen with the Rays and how for years they may not name a closer. There'll be guys coming out of that bullpen there that you may have never heard of, names that aren't familiar when this team breaks spring training. But this is one guy that has been here a couple of years. This is Pete from St. Louis that has been an anchor for this Rays bullpen. He needs to make sure that he is, again, available. He's keeping the pitch count down because I'm not worried about the off the field type of stuff. This is one of the best leaders on the team. This is one of those guys that's going to be able to carry himself like a professional every single day. But you need to see a good start. A good start for the Rays in every facet of the game is going to be so pivotal to their success. More them than anybody else. And we have evidence. We've seen it the last couple of years. No messing around with Pete Fairbanks. I don't want to see an over-reliance on the off-speed. I don't want to see him throwing a bunch of sliders. He is a big dude that throws the ball hard as hell. By the time his front foot lands, it seems like he is right on top of the batter. If I see Pete Fairbanks throwing a bunch of sliders early on in the season, I'm going to lose my freaking mind. Throw the gas, man. Make him prove that they can hit it. Then if the guy's on the fastball, then you adjust. Then you throw some of the off-speed pitches. But that closer role, it's his. It is his. Go do your thing. Go be one of the best closers in baseball. How about a couple of all-stars for the Rays this year? I know a lot of times it's a popularity contest, but say Fairbanks has 15 to 20 saves in the first half. Let's say Caminero really is that guy. Let's say Josh Lowe comes out and Shane McClanahan balls out. Why can't this team have 3 or 4 all-stars? Number 5, Yandy Diaz. I know he signed this, this new extension. He is the table setter and the tone setter for this lineup and maybe this entire team. We all know that there was no love lost between Yandy Diaz and Randy Arozarena. And we know about the, little scrap outside of the Trop years ago involving their wives, blah, blah, blah. And you also saw the article that Mark Topkin wrote a couple of weeks ago in the Tampa Bay Times about, this team focusing more on the team as a whole. Not the names on the back of the jersey, but the name on the front of the jersey. We can read between the lines a little bit and have an idea that they probably were talking about Jose Siri and Randy Arozarena, right? No names were mentioned, but just look at who's here and who's not here. Yandy, a guy that's a lot more deferential. Even though he wears some bright colors, he's very quiet, very unassuming. But part of the reason why this team struggled to start the 2024 season is because Yandy didn't live up to expectations. Yandy didn't perform at the level that we've come accustomed to the last couple of seasons. He just wasn't good enough. I mean, you look at his stats from one year to the next. I mean, you look at what he was able to do in 2022 and 2023. And even last year, he was able to right the ship and bat 281 with an on-base percentage of 341. It's not too bad. And the on-base percentage is probably a little bit lower than what you'd like from your leadoff hitter, but a WAR of 1.6. But you look at 2022 and 2023, where he played 137 games in each one of those years. In 2022, he had 140 knocks, scored 71 runs. He batted .296 and an on-base percentage of .401. In 2023, he had 173 hits, 95 runs. He batted .330, winning the batting title, and an on-base percentage of .410. His OPS needs to be over 820. His batting average needs to be right around 300, and the on-base percentage has to be over 400. There's no debate there. There's no discussion there. That's what it has to be. He is a guy, you want to talk about his weight, losing weight, putting on weight, less muscle, more muscle. I don't care. How does he look inside of how does he look in a gym? I don't really give a crap what he looks like. I'm sorry. That kind of shit doesn't matter to me. There was such a big discussion going into last season about how Yandy lost weight and Randy put on more muscle. And I made this comment on WDAE at the time. How often do you really see a guy make a big time adjustment with his weight, whether it's putting weight on or taking weight off, and it benefits them the next season? If anything, you're going to see a guy maybe grow and develop as a youngster, right? He's a young guy. He's scrawny. He's small. You don't really see, well, you just kind of see that natural progression as the guys get older and he puts more muscle on. You get that. But guys in the middle of their career, if you see things like that, it never really works out, because you see what happened last year with Yandy Diaz, where it was clearly not solid, clearly not good. He did not get on base. He did not set the table for this Rays lineup. And then for Randy Arozarena, great, you have all these big muscles. You're trying to be a 30 home run, 100 RBI guys, and you're not doing it. You didn't do it. The production was way down. And that's why when the Rays moved on from him, it was more of a sentimental thing than actually a statistical thing. Were they able to replace that? Maybe. But it wasn't like they were missing on-field production, because those guys didn't step up to the plate and come up when the team needed them. So those are my 5 guys that I'm looking at: Junior Caminero, Shane McClanahan, Josh Lowe, Pete Fairbanks, and Yandy Diaz. Those are the 5 players where I think your success, you can directly correlate to the production of those 5 players. And I know that there's going to be importance laid on the other starters, some of the middle relievers, what Brandon Lau does, an opportunity for Johnny DeLuca to start every day in center field, what happens with Christopher Morel. But if Christopher Morel doesn't play good, I mean, it's not anything different than what we saw last year, unfortunately. He is a guy that needs to play better. Traded away Isaac Paredes. Isaac was good for the Rays, man. He really was. You traded him away for a guy in Christopher Morel. And, yeah, you hit that home run first game. But after that, left a lot to be desired. Is he really part of this team's plans going forward? Maybe. But it's not a surefire thing. I don't think the team's success this year really is dependent on what Christopher Morel does. Especially when you know what's waiting in the wings with Chandler Simpson and Carson Williams and Trey Morgan and a lot of these other guys, who the majority of them have gotten sent down. A lot of these young guys, as we get closer and closer to opening day on the 28th, these guys are getting sent down. They're going to prepare to get their season started at AAA in Durham. And if things go the right way, then maybe you'll see them up here at some point. I hope so. I really do. I hope that the Rays look at a situation almost like we see with the Lightning, how they go for it, how Jason Licht goes for it. Because for the Rays and all the success that they've had with some of these young players, or at least having all these prospects, you want to see them perform big time with the big club. That to me is going to be something to be cognizant of as we get closer and closer to opening day. My guy Joey's working on getting here with me. Joey, I think if you're on, if you can hear me, if you're on Wi-Fi, take Wi-Fi off. I think that might be it, buddy. That might be the only issue. Watch out for the Aussie me, David Terry says. Yes, that could be another guy. When you look at Curtis Mead and what he was able to do in spring training so far, I mean, is Eloy Jimenez a part of this team going forward? Those two guys might be battling for a roster spot. What happens with Jonathan Aranda? Too many guys over there that have performed at a decent level for AAA, and then when it gets to the big show, it's not working. Let me try Joe again. There he is. Okay, we got it now. Hey, pal.
Hey, can you hear me, buddy?
Yeah, you're good. For some reason, it wasn't popping up on the bottom, but yeah, you're in. How are you, man? Thank you.
I'm doing great. Beautiful day out here.
Oh, gosh, man. And Joey Knight, our good friend from the Tampa Bay Times. I said this yesterday with Mark Topkin, and I'll say it with Joey here. It's so important, guys, to support local, especially this time of year. Subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times today. Now with March Madness here, we got Ed Encina smack dab in the middle of a postseason run, hopefully for the Lightning. We know what happens with the Buccaneers with Rick Stroud, Mark Topkin with baseball season around the corner, John Romano, Colleen Wright just wrote a great article on the Rays Stadium saga. So I can't stress enough, support local and our friends at the Tampa Bay Times, even if it's just a gift. Get it as a gift for somebody, because that's how we're going to continue to cover our teams here locally, supporting local, again, with our friends at the Tampa Bay Times. I'm so excited about tomorrow night with Coach Jose and USF going up. This is a blue blood game, Joey. This is one of those games. I know me growing up, it was Tennessee and UConn. It was Pat Summin and Gino Auriemma. Unfortunately, Pat is no longer with us, but I mean, this is an opportunity on the national stage for Coach Jose and the Bulls, even though it's going to be a tall mountain to climb, to really let everybody know that this is a different year and that they can come out on top. It's going to be tough.
Well, first of all, I appreciate that endorsement of our work at the Times. Secondly, fans should be excited. Bulls fans should be excited. This is a winnable game. Jose said it after they won their conference tournament in Fort Worth last week. He said, you know, if we're relegated to a double-digit seed, an 11 or 12 seed, you know, I feel for the team that's playing us. Mm-hmm. And USF has shown it has the chops to go out and win a game just like this. We all know about Tennessee's history and you know, the banners that hang in Thompson Bowling Arena and all that, and Pat Summitt, and what a legend she remains. What she did for women's basketball, but this is a program, Tennessee, that is not the Tennessee, not your uncle's old Tennessee. They're still good. They still compete in the SEC. They've kind of had a resurgence with their first-year coach, Kim Caldwell, who runs kind of a frenetic style of play that if you don't see it every game, it's a little difficult to get used to. But this is a winnable game for Jose and this team. They've got the personnel. They've got the depth, I think, to compete against the Vols. They beat Duke. Yeah. You know, Duke's a favorite in this tournament. You know, maybe not one of the 5 or 6 teams that could win it all, but certainly maybe if you stretch that to 10. And USF embarrassed Duke in the Yuengling Center in December. So that's why Jose schedules so rigidly in the non-conference play, so they can come into games just like this and say, we're not intimidated. We've seen opponents like this before. We know what we're getting ourselves into. You know, Columbus, Ohio, neutral site. I think this is a winnable game for USF. And then they win this game, and then they play, you know, a mid-seed in the second round. You know, that's up for grabs. And that gives USF a chance for the first time in program history to reach the Sweet 16, the second weekend of NCAA tournament play, which is their stated goal.
Yeah, and that would be fantastic. 10th time that we've been able to see them for Coach Jose Fernandez in his 25 years to be able to make it. What is it about him, Joey? What is it? I mean, it's been a quarter century with him as the head coach there at USF. What is it about him that allows him to have success year in, year out?
I think it's 2 things. I think he's very crafty offensively. From what I've been told by many people over the years, he watches a lot of NBA and he calls, you know, whatever he watches, and, you know, picks and chooses schemes and styles that he thinks will fit his players. So he's just very crafty schematically and offensively. You know, he really takes what he thinks will work for his kids from the NBA. Very creative offensive mind. The second thing is he's found his niche in terms of recruiting, going globally and, you know, just picking really, really good international players. That's been proven year after year after year. I wrote it today in TampaBay.com. I think he's got 12 different countries are represented on this current roster, including the United States. It's just something. He's developed recruiting contacts globally, especially in Europe. So he's able to go over there and cultivate and get really good players. Not, you know, not a European player for the sake of being a European player, but a really good European player, whether they're from Italy or, you know, Bulgaria or wherever they might be. He's developed a really good recruiting base over there. So it's two things. I think he's really crafty and really has a good offensive mind. Plus, he's found that recruiting niche that enables him to replenish his roster with really good global players every year.
Joe, I wanted to ask you about USF athletics as a whole, because like I look at baseball, they're 3 games over 500. They win a series against Florida Gulf Coast. Softball's playing really well. Football seems to be on the rise. There's a search now for the men's basketball coach. Like, I feel like what Michael Kelly wanted to do a couple of years ago, I feel like we're on the right track. What is your assessment kind of when it comes to the development of this entire athletic program as a whole?
Well, I think the foundation was set by what they've done with their facilities. And I mean, let's be honest, let's not be naive. Facilities is not a big criterion for incoming recruits anymore. They want to get paid. Right. Nonetheless, I think USF has really done a fantastic job over the last decade or even more than that, positioning themselves to have some of the most palatial facilities, whether it's the Muma Center, the basketball complex, the Yingling Center, that baseball stadium, that softball stadium, and now it's adding on with the indoor practice facility, and of course the looming on-campus football stadium. So I mean, that's still a factor. Kids come on campus and they see those things, and you know they're crown jewels, and that's appealing. And you know, I think USF is doing all it can to position itself well in terms of NIL, making sure their student athletes get compensated, and the American Athletic I
think we lost him. Keep him there. Joey, we lost you. Somebody probably called. We did it. I was just having this conversation earlier this morning with somebody about StreamYard. Sometimes losing guys on calls when you use your phone, which is fine. I mean, it's just the way it goes. I think the majority of the people are using their phone anyway. We'll wait a second before Joey can get back with us. But yeah, I mean, you look at the athletic programs right now. Shout out to USF baseball winning Florida Gulf Coast and Fort Myers. I mean, softball winning as well. I mean, did you see what happened last weekend? Last weekend, there was wins everywhere. Tennis and track and lacrosse, baseball, and softball. It was just everywhere. Of course, we know what happened with the women. Like, now is such a great time for Michael Kelly and the green and gold. And I've been telling you guys, this is a sleeping giant. I know our pal Rich Hollenberg said it on Monday. This athletic program is a sleeping giant. Go support the Bulls, green and gold, all day, every day. It's only going to get bigger. It's only going to get better. And you want to get in on the ground floor to be able to support these teams. Football, that on-campus facility is already, the practice facility is awesome, right? The stadium. All good. I'm just texting Joey. I'll get you. A couple weeks. Just want to text him. Love you, Joe. We appreciate you, buddy. But yeah, I am so happy for everything that we're seeing with the Bulls and with Coach Michael Kelly. And it's just fantastic. It really is. So go us@bulls.com. They have all the information on there for everything that they do. Yeah, it's exciting. It's an exciting time. Taking a look at everything that we've got going on right now. I wanted to touch on this thing real quick. So when we go through certain things in sports, go check out Flanagan's. There's different stories in sports that we keep a close eye on, or things that continue to get talked about. And Ian and I spoke about this. I don't know if we spoke about it on the Beckles and Recher podcast. And again, if you missed it, we're going to be live every Wednesday at 3:00 from the Dignitary Cafe, 4817 Southwest Shore Boulevard. Go check them out. Go get you a shell, some kava, some kratom, all that jazz. But as much as we love to talk about the games, and as much as we love to talk about the players and the coaches and all this different stuff, some of the storylines that have the most staying power are the ones that really don't have anything to do with sports at all, right? And maybe the hockey is probably not the best idea because like it happened in the game, the Four Nations, right? But what was in the 2.5 months that we've had sports in 2025, what was one of the biggest stories? And I'll ask you out there, everybody watching the podcast, if you're on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook right now, through 2.5 months, what has been the biggest sports story in the country? And maybe not on the court, on the field, on the ice stuff. What about off the court, off the ice, off the field stuff? What has been the biggest story? And when you start, and I'll give it a second so you guys can populate and give me some answers here. And I'm not talking, again, about on the ice. I'm not talking about Ovechkin's chase. I'm not talking about Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl. I'm talking about off the field, off the ice, but stuff around the sports world. And the first one that comes to mind to me is the halftime show with Kendrick Lamar. Think about how many people were talking about the halftime show. They loved it. They hated it. They liked it. It was okay. I didn't really get all of it. Why did it have to be so political? Why was it after, why did they have to talk about Drake? What is Serena out there? I can't believe she was doing this. But what did that have to do with, really? What did that have to do with sports? Right? Now, here's a good one from, and this is on Twitter, the Love Wins games this year for Amir Abdur-Rahim. Okay, good. I like that. I like that one. That's what you want to, that's something that I will not soon forget. And I know our guy, Rich Hollenberg, who did such a great job on the call on Tom Crean. And, he said, Tom Crean, that's the guy. That's the guy that I hope takes over there at USF. But it's not always those stories on the field, right? There's just enveloped and developed storylines that get us to pay attention, that get us to keep talking. And I think one of the biggest ones that we've seen here, and this is why I'm bringing it up, is the whole Stephen A. Smith, LeBron James situation, where Stephen A. Smith pleaded with LeBron James as a father to stop with all of this, with all the shenanigans, with all the tomfoolery. Stop. Saying, LeBron, you're the person that brought this to your son. You're the person that said that your son, as a high school player, was better than players in the NBA. Stop, LeBron. I'm pleading with you as a dad. That's such a huge story even to this day. Shout out to Ren. Liam Cohen leaving the Bucs at the altar. There you go. How much run did we get out of that story? How many opinions did we have about Liam Cohen leaving? I can't believe that. The drama, the saga of him not answering text messages, not answering phone calls. Remember that? It was huge. We still talk. I still get asked about that. I was on with Pewter Report with Matt Matera the other day at 4:00. We had a great chat. Go check that out, pewterreport.com, or go check them out, Pewter Report on YouTube. But a lot of these stories have people just so fixated and just mesmerized because of what's happening off the field, off the court, off the ice. And I look at the Stephen A. Smith and LeBron situation, and for those of you who didn't follow it as much, and it's kind of hard not to if you're, not living under a rock and you love sports. After saying that, the next time that LeBron saw Stephen A. Smith, as he was sitting courtside there at the Crypto.com arena, he said, "Keep my son's effing name out of your mouth." And that caused a stir. And then Stephen A. addresses it. And then he sees LeBron and Richard Jefferson talking about it. So he goes on Gilbert Arenas' podcast, Gil's Arena, and he addresses it there. Now, it's one thing, right? It's one thing if it's just Stephen A. and LeBron going back and forth. That's fine. And it's another thing is if like I talk about it, Ian talks about it, maybe local media talks about it. But when you start getting the opinions of other top tier names in sports media, that's how you know that a story has legs. That's how you know that it's more than just what happens during the game. I watched yesterday Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce have an opinion on that. I watched Colin Cowherd have an opinion on that. I watched a video with Nick Wright having an opinion on that. I watched Dan Patrick have an opinion on that. And just think about all the different media entities. Stephen A. is an ESPN employee owned by Walt Disney. And these other guys, where you're watching Dan Patrick on Peacock, right? You're watching Nick Wright and Colin Cowherd on Fox. You're watching the podcasts of Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. You're seeing Draymond Green commenting on it as well. It just shows you that we are in a totally different time when it comes to sports media. Whether you like it or whether you dislike it, you better learn to love it because it's here to stay. And the stories that get the most run, the stories that get the most burn, the stories that may piss you off more than anything else aren't going to be these, heartfelt stories and, walk-off home runs and things like that. Controversy creates cash. The chaos that ensues is going to create a buzz that is going to continue to keep certain events in conversation. Look no further than the Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James situation. Look no further than the Kendrick Lamar halftime show. Look no further than Liam Cohen leaving the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to go take the job with the Jacksonville Jaguars. If Liam Cohen leaves for the Jacksonville Jaguars and everything was up front, everything was on the up and up, does it create that much of a stir? If it's similar to what Ben Johnson did, leaving the Lions to go to the Bears, if it was similar to what Aaron Glenn did, leaving the Lions for the Jets, if it was similar to a couple years ago where Jonathan Gannon left the Eagles to go to the Cardinals, or Shane Steichen left the Eagles to go to the Indianapolis Colts, it doesn't have that same type of impact, that staying power, something that resonates with people and continues the conversation. And I know to some people, it's like, God, that sucks. I don't want to talk about things like that. And I wish that it didn't happen. I hear you. But you look back at something like Brett Favre stories or LeBron James stories or Cowboys, Yankees, or Lakers. Part of the reason why those are the things that lead off every show on TV, and the low-hanging fruit of the LeBron MJ discussion, it's because those controversial takes by the masses, even if it pisses people off, it's going to continue. It's going to continue. So don't be surprised. That's all I'm saying. Don't be surprised when stories like this continue to have people react to them. Because I was very surprised that some of the top tier sports media voices chimed in on what happened with Stephen A. Smith and LeBron. And it's unique to be able to hear, Carmelo and Dwayne Wade, who are so close with LeBron, have their 2 cents on Stephen A. And then Stephen A. responded to those guys. And then you have a little different of an aspect from Dan Patrick and the Dayanets, and they look at this story and they're just pretty much all against Stephen A. Looking at LeBron. You look at Colin Cowherd, he looks at and supports LeBron, saying that he's an overprotective father. And he looked at it in a supporting kind of way. And I thought that was intriguing. I looked at Nick Wright and how he brought it up. And he spoke about it in terms of, and I really appreciate this. Nick Wright said something something that was very prevalent. He said, regardless of how big you get as a sports media figure, even if you are the biggest voice in the game, like Stephen A. Smith, you're always going to be a supporting actor in this story where the athletes and the coaches are the main characters. We can't do our job unless they are on the court, on the ice, on the field, doing their thing. So sometimes in our position in the media, we got to take an L. Sometimes we in the media have to understand that we won't get a chance to drop the mic. We won't get a chance to get the final word. It's almost like quoting the great 20th century philosopher D. Johnson. Sometimes you just got to know your role and shut your mouth. I love that angle. I love the different angles that these sports media entities have all taken when it comes to one of their own going toe-to-toe with arguably one of the biggest athletes in the world. And I hope that as you continue to listen to the Jay Recher podcast here, you also, even if it is a topic that may seem mundane and beaten over the head, something like the Ray Stadium saga, the reason why you'll listen to me over maybe some other people is because I'm not going to regurgitate the same old shit that somebody else is saying. You're going to be able to listen and you're going to be able to watch other people in sports media, whether it's radio or TV. And I think if you're any kind of experienced fan or viewer or follower, you're going to be able to see right through the bullshit. Right through it. I got a great example here. If you want to find out if somebody knows what the hell they're talking about on a certain show, and I'm not calling anybody out in particular, but I've heard it for years. But if you want to see if somebody really knows what the hell they're talking about, or let me put it this way. If you want to tell for when somebody doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, a certain player, a certain team, a certain sport, listen to what they do when it comes to describing said team, said player, said sport. They're going to go to these crutches. They're going to read off the standings, and they're going to read the upcoming schedule. Those are the two things I want all of you out there. Okay. And listen, you can have differing opinions. I'm not talking about that, right? I know, Colin, and sometimes you might be wrong. Sometimes you might mess up. That happens. Yes, I listened to the show yesterday, and when I started the show, I said Tampa Bay Rays midfielder Ollie Bassett, not Tampa Bay Rowdies midfielder. Things like that are going to happen when you speak for a living. That is the nature of the beast that comes with the territory. Sorry, not sorry. It happens. Sometimes you're going to forget things. Sometimes you're going to misspeak. Nobody is perfect. It happens to the best of us. I'm not talking about slips like that. Again, nobody's perfect. But if you want to read through the BS, and if you want to know that somebody either doesn't know what the hell they're talking about or did not do their homework, because a lot of this stuff can be avoided if you just do a little research. If you just do some background checks. Do you think last week I really knew who Maryland's best players were before that baseball series against USF? You think I follow Maryland baseball on a daily basis? No. I went back. I looked at the Hakopian brothers. I looked at Calarco. I looked at some of these other guys that they have. I look at their ability to be able to perform at the collegiate level and watch some videos and do my research, because it's impossible to know everything. But I'll be damned if people say that I'm not prepared. Ever. So for you, if you have an opportunity to try and differentiate whether somebody knows what they're talking about or not, again, I implore you to examine those two things. Does this person really know about college basketball team X? Does this person really know about baseball team Y? Does this person really know about hockey team Z? Well, if they're reading from the standings, if they're reading from the schedule, if they're reading from the stat sheet, if they're reading from those three things, then I think you've got your answer. So I challenge you, listen to different shows, download the apps, iHeart app, TuneIn app, go check them out. Listen to shows around the country. Watch TV shows. Watch when people just get on, they start reading off of a piece of paper of somebody's mock draft and then don't give any additional commentary. It's like, that's not the way it works. You want to hear opinions. And to kind of give it a full circle thing, that's why those guys get paid what they get paid. And that's why they do what they do. And that's why they're all top 10 voices in the game. Is because they can all look at a situation like what happened with Stephen A. and LeBron James. And they can all look at it from a slightly different viewpoint and not regurgitate the facts over and over and over again. Dan Patrick gave you his opinion. Colin Cowherd gave you his opinion. Nick Wright gave you his opinion. Right? I mean, it's just, to me, it was very intriguing to see not only that they would talk about something like that that wasn't under their umbrella, but how they all slightly viewed it in a different way. When you go out there and you consume your entertainment, get somebody that is going to entertain you, get somebody that is going to make you think, because that's what it's all about. I don't take that for granted. I don't take that lightly at all. I know that if you're spending your time here on the Jay Recher podcast with me, I am not just going to blow smoke up your ass. I'm just going to la and have you waste your time. Not a chance. I'm putting thoughts and I'm putting my emotions, I'm putting my feelings, I'm putting my efforts into the discussions and the thought processes that I have. Bringing in guests that continue the conversation and push it forward, and also keeping you up to date with some of the breaking news that we have here in the Tampa Bay area and abroad, because we know on a day like today, there's a lot of great things going on. So let's take a look at some of the scores that we have so far today, because there are two games underway so far. We have Creighton and Louisville, High Point and Purdue. Number 9, Creighton, 40. Number 8, Louisville, 25. That's 3:55 left in the first half. I love that these games are staggered. So it'll be CBS, True TV, TNT, TBS. And then back again, CBS, True TV, TNT, TBS for the first 8 games. It's not really like that in the night schedule, but I think the first 8 games, when you whet your appetite for the first time this March, I love that, because you kind of get an idea of how far along. Because that game is now under 3 minutes left, with Creighton holding a 13-point lead, 40-27. High Point and Purdue, it's a 1-point game there as the Boilermakers lead 15-14. That's a 4-13 matchup there with just over 11 minutes left in the first half on True TV. Creighton was a team that you looked at in that Big East matchup with St. John's and Rick Pitino and the guys, and that was a knockdown, drag-out affair. And I've always kept an eye on Creighton because of, remember Doug McDermott, his dad, who just re-upped, he's going to stay there. You wondered how long he was going to stay as the coach now that his son moved on to the pros, and he's still there, where Doug's been, in the NBA almost 10 years now. Louisville, who lost in the ACC championship game to Duke after a big-time win in the semifinal game against Clemson. That was still one of the finishes that you just shake your head. There was so much contact at the end of that game. But I picked Creighton in this game to win. I thought the 9 seed was going to beat the 8 seed because of the way that they had to play down the stretch there. And of course, they didn't win the Big East, but I thought that the physicality that they played with was going to bode well for them in March Madness, especially in that first round matchup. And I did knock Louisville for not being able to beat Duke without Cooper Flagg. You would think that with him going down, that they'd be able to take advantage of not having the best player in college basketball. But partially it was them. But then, of course, Concaneppel and some of the Proctor and these other guys with the Blue Devils were able to step up. And, I'm excited to see some of these young coaches really with an opportunity to make some noise. A guy like John Shire. It is not easy to take over for a legend. We see that in all kinds of sports. We can see that when it comes to players. We can see it when it comes to coaches. But when you're talking best of the best, one of the greatest of all time, I mean, Coach K, he's in that conversation with John Wooden and Bob Knight. Some of these other guys in college, men's college basketball, where you look at and you're like, he's got to be on the Mount Rushmore if you're one of those Mount Rushmore guys. So John Shire, to be able to come in and have the success that he's had, I think that's phenomenal. And I remember, who was it? I couldn't remember the guy's name that came in after Dean Smith before Roy Williams. Didn't do a great job. And we see it all up and down college basketball where there are issues with coaches that come in after a legend. John Shire's hit the ground running. And it's not like, all right, wow, he's winning with Coach K's team. We know how college basketball is now. We know that it's a lot of one and done. And good on Coach K, because he was very stubborn early on in that process. No, that's not how we're going to operate. Guys are going to stay for at least 2 years. Things are going to be different. I'm not going to recruit guys like that. And then he saw Kentucky win the national championship with Coach Cal and a bunch of first-year guys. And Coach K was like, yeah, we're going to need to learn how to adjust. And that's what it's about in sports. You can't be so stubborn and stuck in your ways that the game passes you by. And look at how many coaches now in 2025 that are going to be involved in March Madness are here performing at a high level. Guys that aren't, John Shire. Guys that aren't a White or a Golden or some of these other young coaches. I mean, look at some of the names that you're going to see here in March Madness. Look no further than Rick Pitino for St. John's. Everywhere that guy goes, he wins in college basketball, usually in year 2. He's no spring chicken. There were so many discussions about whether it's college football or college basketball. I mean, hell, that's part of the reason why Nick Saban got out. Because you're not just a basketball coach anymore. You're a player manager, a man manager. I mean, go look at what Fran Brown is doing at Syracuse with the football team. He's making sure that every single one of his players starts an LLC in his name. He's making sure that every single one of his players saves 40% of his NIL money. This guy is setting those dudes up for success, but not everybody's going to do that. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to look at that like it's a big time burden, but not Coach Brown. For all the stuff that Deion Sanders, you want to talk about the things that he isn't doing well. He is setting those guys up for success. He is making sure that they feel loved and they feel like they're set up for a life after football. Not everybody wants to deal with that. But these coaches, especially these older coaches that understand that that's part of the gig, whether they take care of it, whether they have somebody on staff that takes care of it. You look at the names like Pitino, like Izzo, like Barnes, like Sampson, like Pearl, like Self. Like, there's a lot of guys with name recognition in March Madness, in the NCAA tournament, where I think people thought there's no way those guys are going to stick around. There's no way those guys are going to be successful. And couldn't have been more wrong. They've just adapted, because that is what great coaches do. Great coaches adapt. even though the landscape is much different, the landscape always changes. The landscape always changes in sports, and you can ask any coach in any level of sports. I asked this question to high school coaches. I asked one of the most prominent coaches in the Tampa area earlier this week, and he said, Jay, it's tough. It's tough because these guys are so different. They don't know how to deal with adversity. Every single time they're faced with a big time obstacle, they run to mommy or daddy. They try to transfer. You're still going to have that. That's never going to go away. But after I had that conversation with that coach, I saw his team go out there with some strength up the middle and beat one of the better teams in the Tampa Bay area because of what he was able to do to adapt as a head coach. That's what it's about. Adapt or die, whether it's sports or whether it's life. I sure as hell had to do that. I went over to iHeart today to go see some friends and to be able to, do some things. I had to cut some spots for something I'm doing with the Tampa Bay Rowdies. And I was having different conversations with people that I haven't seen in a couple of weeks, a couple of months. And speaking about my transition, and there were so many great people over there saying, man, you're doing so great. Keep up the good work. Adapt. You have to adapt. I can't sit there and wallow in my own self-pity. I can't sit there and bitch and moan and complain about what happened to me. Never going to do it. Never will do it. Never have done it. Never will do it. You just got to adapt. You got to adapt and you got to find a way. And if you don't find a way, somebody else will. And then you have nobody to blame but yourself. Ren, I like this, buddy. Cooper Flagg. Greatest action hero name ever. You got that right, buddy. Let's give you an update here on the Valspar as well. Again, no show tomorrow because where? I'll be at the Valspar there at Innisbrook. Over at the Copperhead Golf Course, we will be sitting our happy butts there at the 8th green. So if you want to come by and say hello, you are more than welcome. 56 degrees. That's why I got the sweatshirt on today, because it's a little chilly out there. The purse for the Valspar, $8.7 million. You'll love to see it. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I think I have. I'm actually in the Valspar golf pool kind of thing. It's free, but it's one of those things where the top people get some for their charities. They're going to get money to a charity, which is good. I picked Tommy Fleetwood to win because our guy Bob Harrick told us to do so. Right now he's 2 over through 16. Damn it, Bob. Right now Jacob Bridgman is tied atop the leaderboard with Keith Mitchell. Both of those guys shot 4 under 67. They're in the clubhouse now. Ryan Fox, the Australian, also at 4 under. He's on 18 as we speak. Nico Echeverria, -3. Harry Hall, Matt Wallace, John Pack, Jeremy Paul, Mason Anderson as well. Sepp Straka, Billy Horschel among the names at 2 under. Xander Schauffele at 1 under as well. Gary Woodland, looking at some of the guys that maybe haven't teed off yet. Yeah, ton of names that have yet to tee off yet, including Adam Hadwin, Bull Zalatoris, Camilo Villegas, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth. I like how they put them together. They know the deal. They definitely know the deal. Sahith Theegala, Zach Johnson, Brant Snedeker, some of those guys, Cam Young. Those are some of the other names that have yet to tee off today. My guy Kevin Roy in here? I thought my guy Kevin Roy was playing. Joel Damon. I know that is a guy that has become really a fan favorite. Just kind of going through here, guys. Jonathan Vegas +7. Oof. Matt Kuchar 4 over. Luke Donald 4 over. Tom Kim 3 over a little bit. There's Kevin Roy 2 over through 13. Okay. So, yeah, go check out these guys. Go get your tickets, ValsparChampionship.com. And we know with a ticket for Saturday's game that you get a ticket to go see the concert, Jordan Davis, on Saturday night. So, really, really good stuff. Yeah. Let's see. Lady Evil. Jay, you think you get Nick right on the show sometime? Would be interesting. I like a lot when he does with First Things First in this podcast after years, of course. Well, thank you very much. It's so hard to be able to get people to come on to be able to do things like that because people are so busy. That's another thing going in with this podcast is when I was there at DAE and I had a show, you had a producer, whether it was John Dugas or whether it was James Donlin, and they can help out a lot. They help out with the graphics. They help out with the contacts for guests and things like that. They're working while you're performing and you're doing the show. What's so difficult about this, and I'm not complaining, I'm just trying to give you guys a peek behind the curtain of what I have to deal with. But for me, I'm the guy that has to book all the guests. I have to come up with all the tweets. I have to upload all the podcasts. I have to cut up all the videos. I have to put them out on social media. And it's just time consuming more than anything. It really is. And it just takes time. And I have to really figure out a way to kind of balance out my day to make sure that everything goes out in an orderly fashion and I can still have some semblance of a life, somewhat, of a life. So yeah, I reach out to people. I've been told no more times now doing my podcast than I ever did as a producer at a radio station, but that's just the way it goes. My feelings aren't hurt. So yeah, I'll reach out to Nick Wright, see what happens. But for the most part, people are pretty accommodating. And at the very least, if they can't make it, they at least let me know I can't do it. Like Freddie Coleman's a great example. We had him on. We had Jonathan Coachman on last week. So we had some big names nationally. A lot of the guys here locally, for the most part, are very accommodating. All the guys at the Tampa Bay Times, all of the TV and radio guys for all the different teams. Yeah, so it's really, really good stuff there. Brandon wants to know, are you going to do a Buccaneers-centric mock draft? I don't do mock drafts, Ren. I'm coming aboard and I'm coming around when it comes to mock drafts because I was so anti-mock draft for a long time. But I've said this before and I'll say it again. I would love if Will Johnson was there. I kind of came and stumbled upon that name on Monday or was it Monday or Tuesday? I think it was Tuesday. Yeah, when did I go on with Matt? It was Tuesday. So Tuesday, as I was going through, and if you missed that show, the March 18th show, it's up on my page here. I was going through the different mock drafts of Mel Kiper Jr. and Daniel Jeremiah, two of the most respected names in the business. And we looked at the difference of one that's a little more standard when the Buccaneers won't have as many options there at 19 versus the other side where a lot of the high profile names and a lot of the sexy, skill position players will be off the board, and it leaves more of an opportunity for the Bucs to get the guy that they want. So if you, and I said it before, I'll say it again, if you see Jackson Dart getting drafted in the top 15, if you see Omarion Hampton drafted in the top 15, if you see Shamar Stewart, you see some of these other guys that really play some positions, you're seeing more quarterbacks now. More quarterbacks, more wide receivers, more running backs. You want as many of those guys to go before 19. You don't want it to be just Ted McMillan. You want a lot of those guys to go early. You want there to be somebody that does something wacky, like the Michael Penix Jr., right? They gave Kirk Cousins all that money, and then they drafted a first-round quarterback out of Washington and Penix Jr. That's going to help the Bucs in a big way. So I would love to see them go get a guy like Will Johnson if he's there at 19. If he's not there and you're going to take an edge rusher, I would trade back. I only think, honestly, there's two options for the Bucs at 19. I think it's Will Johnson and I think it's Jahad Campbell. Those are the two guys at 19. If both of those guys are gone at 19, I'm trading back. And then I'm focused on getting maybe an edge rusher or maybe Barron. Barron is the corner, another secondary guy I like out of Texas. He's a little bit more of a ball hawk. You're keeping Jamel Dean, so I think Barron coming in there and joining up with Zion McCollum and joining up with Jamel Dean, I think that makes sense. But if not, I'm trading back. And maybe I'm taking an edge rusher later on and getting a Mike Green or an Ezeraku or a James Pierce Jr. I might do that. And then looking at a Schlesinger or a Bassa or one of those guys, you need an interior linebacker, need an inside guy in rounds 2 or 3 to be able to put there with Levante David and with a guy like Servassier Dennis that's coming off of injury. I am still holding out hope that Servassier is that guy, but until I see it, until I can see that guy can play at least 14 games in a regular season, I'm still in a wait-and-see approach when it comes to him. Now, when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and again, Matt Matera wrote a really good article about this over on pewterreport.com, and I definitely think that you guys should go check that out. And the first story on there is the Buccaneers are housing a top inside linebacker on a top 30 visit, and that's Demetrius Knight Jr. Okay, there you go. Viewed as a second-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, Pro Football Focus 33rd ranked prospect. I wouldn't hate that as a second-round pick. That's a guy that would fit right in there. Right? But when I look at what Jason Licht is doing and how he's going about his business and what kind of environment has been fostered with the Buccaneers, right? That is so crucial to the success of an organization, to the franchise as a whole. And I'm really surprised that more teams don't follow suit with what Jason Licht is doing. Because you have these organizations out there that really have no plan. They have no kind of, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to build here. We're going to build through the draft. We're going to build through free agency. We're going to trade for this guy. You're kind of muddled in mediocrity. You're stuck in purgatory. What's your plan? What kind of roster are you trying to build? What kind of chemistry are you trying to create with your team? Because chemistry and that type of stuff can be overblown. But if you have a real tangible evidence that it works, then man, that is just, you're winning a battle that I don't even know if certain teams realize that is being waged. You want to be able to keep your guys. You want to be able to have an environment where guys feel comfortable coming back. Guys feel comfortable with re-signing. Guys want to get traded here. And when you're here, you know that the team is going to do whatever it takes to make sure that you're comfortable and make sure that you're going to make the right moves to put your team in a position to succeed. Right? And that's one thing, and we'll go through all of our teams here locally. The Buccaneers have done a phenomenal job doing that because they've fostered an environment where Baker Mayfield can be his guy. He can just be himself. Baker can just be Baker. He can call up a guy like Tristan Wirfs. They can go for beers. Nobody's judging them. It's not like the Dallas Mavericks where, who was it? Was it Michael Finley that took the beer out of Luka's hand after they won the Western Conference Finals last year? You're not getting that with the Bucs. Go drink your beer, Baker. Go shotgun a beer, Vita. Go do your thing, Tristan. They're grown-ass men. And they're treated as such. They're respected. You go do what you got to do on your off time. Go be a human being. Go be a friend. Go be a brother. Go be a dad. Go be a husband. Then when you come here, hey, man, lock in. Dial in. The way that the Buccaneers have changed, and it's not just about the winning on the field. The winning is a byproduct of what the environment that has been set in place. And yeah, you could say it was Brady and Arians and Light, but it's still going. It didn't dissipate and it didn't just poof disappear when Tom left. It's still here. And it takes everybody. It takes everybody. It takes the coaches being on the same page last year to make sure that Mike got 1,000 yards. You don't think people realize that? You don't think people were aware of that? You don't think people just said, whoa, that team put themselves maybe in harm's way of possibly turning the football over and losing the game, but they did it because one of their leaders, one of their pillars in the community, one of their future Ring of Honor and Hall of Fame members had a record that was in reach. It was attainable, and everybody was on board with getting it done. And I can't tell you what that feeling was like to hear I was downstairs at the time at Raymond James Stadium, watching it on the TV, and you could feel the rumble at Ray J. That kind of stuff permeates through the entire organization, through the entire fan base. That's the kind of stuff that winners do. It's not always about, I do this because of this number and this number. When you start getting like that, just think about that. The friends that you go out to eat with, they're trying to look at every single number. Well, I only ate, I only had 6 wings, and that's 49 cents each. You're like, come come on, bro. Really? Really? Split the bill, or you get this time and I'll get the next time. Nobody wants to be the penny pincher. Nobody likes that stuff. Even when it goes outside of money. Nobody likes that type of thing where you're always like you're bean counting. Nobody likes that. The Bucs have become one of the most respected organizations in all of sports, and look at how they handled the Mike Evans situation. Look at how look at how they've allowed Baker to flourish. And if you don't think that makes a difference, look at how these guys have been able to find to come back and bring these guys back. And Chris Godwin leaving more money on the table to stay here. Levante David, not really, all right, having to take his time to make the decision, but once he made the decision to come back, there's no other questions. He's not worried about the team. He's not worried about the leadership. He's not worried about the foundation. He's just going to go out there and play football. Guys retire early when the situations aren't great. Guys take maybe less money or even money or maybe a little bit more money elsewhere when things aren't great. The players are rewarded. And you look outside and you go sign people and you draft people and you make smart decisions. That's what the Buccaneers have done. The Rays, of course, are on the other side of that, where the players look at what the coaches do, and I think there's a redeeming quality there. I think there's a redeeming quality with the Rays where especially players that try to kind of readjust their value, right? Jake Diekman and Rafael Soriano and some of these guys and Charlie Morton and Rich Hill and some of these guys that maybe they're on the backside of their career, they're on the back nine of their career now, right? But they come to the Rays because they know that the coaching is fantastic. The culture's pretty damn good. They're not worried about staying here full time. And we know that's the drawback. We know the drawback of the Rays is the inability to sustain success with the same players. We understand that. But the things that they do well, right? The environment. Like, even though they didn't think the environment was great last year, and they say that that's one of the big things, like, it didn't really, outside of that fight, but that was a couple of years ago. Last year, it seemed like they had a pretty good time, right? It wasn't wide open cracks in the foundation when you could see it from a mile away, and you're like, oh, wow. Guys arguing in the dugout, guys going crazy. And listen, sometimes that's good. Sometimes you need that. You remember BJ Upton and Evan Longoria years ago. But it didn't seem like there was any noticeable fractures when it came to the Rays. But we know what their shortcomings are. But the positive things, some of the things that they do share with the Buccaneers, that's why they're still able to be competitive on the field despite what goes on off of it, despite what goes on with the ownership, despite what goes on when it comes to the lack of, flow of finances when it comes to the payroll. But I asked this question then about that. And, as I'm talking about this, I'm thinking about it. Do you think that affects the overall product on the field? Because at the end of the day, the Rays have made it to the World Series twice, but they've never won it. And I wonder if that is a drawback. I don't want to say guys try less, but does it affect the bottom line as far as how successful they're going to be if guys don't really have that vested interest? If they don't really feel like they're going to be there for a while anyway, they're going to get traded at the deadline anyway. Because even if it takes just a little minuscule, even unintended portion from their production, the Rays need every single drop of that to be successful. And they just don't have it. They don't have it. They have to overcome all of these obstacles and the things that the Buccaneers and their fans and their players, they don't have to worry about. And then we look at the Lightning. The Lightning sometimes have to make tough business decisions. We know that. We've seen it with Palat. We've seen it with Killorn. We saw it with McDonough the first time. We've seen it with a lot of different guys with the Bolts that have to, Gord. You've seen it with a lot of these guys. And when you look at what Julian Brisebois has done, he's had success. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. And with the salary cap the way it is, I think players know it's not because they don't want to keep them here. It's because they can't keep them here. And guys outperform their contract and they have to go get that money somewhere else. Andre Palat being one of those guys, right? But you did reward Chernak, and you did reward Cirelli, and you did reward Sergachev. Point got paid. Vazzy got paid. Cooch got paid. Hedman got paid. We obviously know what happened with Stamkos. But within the Tampa Bay Lightning organization, and it comes from the top with Jeffrey Vinik, guys love playing here. Guys love being within this organization and living in the Tampa Bay area. I mean, Yanni Gourde is still smiling days or weeks after getting reacquired. It's going to take Oliver Bjorkstrand a little bit, but he even said it himself in that first day, out of all the teams, for Tampa to be that place where I was going, I was really excited. That's what you want to hear. You know the organization is going to treat you like a professional. And look at what the Four Nations has done. The Four Nations face-off has been a pain. And the guys are feeling it, whether it was imminently right after with a guy like Connor McDavid, or maybe sometimes now where I think it even affects John Cooper. Like even he, the other night when we spoke to him before the game, just a little like, man, I need a little bit of a break here. So he'll take a day off. He won't go to morning skate. He's given those guys, he's given Cirelli and Hagel and Point and Gensel and Hedman, he's given them a little bit more of a rest. That's that type of mindset, though, of we hear you, player X. We hear you, player Y. We hear you, player Z. You need a break. It's not because you're lazy. It's because you need that physical rest. You need that mental rest. So that organization understands its players. And again, going back to Jason Licht, where I started with this entire thing, he's winning because he's established a culture of winning and understanding and togetherness and making everybody feel important and that they're part of the solution, not part of the problem. Somebody messes up, it isn't screw this guy, he sucks, he's not one of us. No, people wrap their arms around him and they say, hey, man, it happens to everybody. We'll get better next time. Julian Breezeball is a guy that's been doing that for a while as well. And he shows his team every single year, more than the other two teams here, because it's different in football. We know baseball doesn't do it. But every single year, Julian Breezeball sends a message to the Bolts. Hey, you guys may be good, but I am going to make sure that I go out and I get resources to help you be even better. Do you know what that means to a team? Do you know what that means to players when they know that the general manager is working the phones, when they know that he is a guy that is spending 365 days trying to make his roster better to improve his team? Even if it's a business decision it may not agree with, nobody's ever going to confuse Julian Breezeball with the general manager that doesn't put forth the effort to get his team in a position where they're going to be contending for a Stanley Cup. We act like that is so that's the obvious. Of course, that's what they get paid to do. But it doesn't seem like that with everybody, does it? It doesn't seem like that with every team in professional sports. My hands are tied. Don't know what I can do. Never get that. Even with Julian, who's been so close to the salary cap the last couple of years. I've got to make moves. Deals in, money in, money out. The only way I can do it. He finds a way. He goes out and gets two fan favorites and brings them back in Ryan McDonough and Yanni Gourde. Some general managers would have such an ego or a stubbornness that they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't bring those guys back. But he looked at Ryan McDonough and said, this is what our decor is missing. This is how I'm going to unlock Erik Chernak's really consistent level of play where he's one of the best shutdown defensemen in the league. We need a middle six guy that's an absolute Tasmanian devil. Let's go get a guy like Yanni Gourde. This isn't a guy going to the well 2 times because he doesn't know what else to do. This is a guy that is identifying pieces that is going to help his team win and succeed. I love that when it comes to a guy like Julian Breezeball. Again, think about that message that it sends the rest of the organization. Whatever it takes to win. I'm going to make sure that my guys are in a position to succeed. I'm going to make sure that they're happy. I'm going to make sure that they're comfortable. Julian Breezeball, just like Jason Licht, finding a way to build that winning culture. And we always build a winning culture here on the program every Thursday at 1:30, and we do it with you, the big you, Eddie Encina. You good? Can you hear me? Are you frozen?
Jay, I've got bad reception right now. So I just want to tell you right now.
Oh boy, where are you?
I was gonna try to do so. I'm with some families in town, so we're bringing them over to the Manatee Center over in Apollo Beach, and I was gonna do this outside, but the wind's too loud, so couldn't do that. So I'm in my car. We're gonna try and make this work.
You're a good man. All right, we won't keep you long, buddy. I wanted to open up and I know you've done a lot of great job, written a lot of great articles from the Tampa Bay Times. But one thing that I know you wrote recently was, the return of Gordon McDonough and what that could possibly open the door for. Could you speak about the I was just mentioning how a lack of ego and a lack of stubbornness for Julian Breezeball to be able to bring those guys back and maybe even to admit he was wrong, or just what that thought process is like for him. And then also, people are always going to wonder now, could that ever lead to a return of Steven Stamkos to Tampa?
Yeah, for sure. That's obviously the natural, question. I thought once it's one thing bringing back Ryan McDonough. It's another thing bringing back Yanni Gourde. I mean, obviously those are needs that were filled at different times. But like you said, I mean, Julian Breezeball is on a 365-day-a-year mission to make this team better, and that doesn't stop at any point. And with McDonough, they obviously saw the opportunity there and they jumped on it. Even taking on all of his cap space and the cap that it involved. 2 years after, there was a situation where it was too much. And with Yanni Gourde, I think that you're looking for a player who now is a little bit different, in a player that he's actually learned a much bigger leadership role from being on an expansion team in Seattle, but still is the same kind of guy who, like you said, is a pest and just that Tasmanian devil kind of player who feasts on being around the net and causing havoc and crashing the net. Both him and Bjorkstrand are guys that do that, and I think we've seen that in the games that we've seen them there. So but again, it's very easy to kind of when a player leaves or you've got to move them, or that's it. And I think what Julian has seen is the need. It's very clear that this team wasn't the same defensively after Ryan McDonough left. Right. So you bring him back, and now you're a better defensive team. With Yanni Gourde, again, the kind of intangibles that he brings, that's something that this team definitely, needs down the stretch and in the playoffs. So you do that. And I still do think that down the road, it might not be in a year, it might not be in 2 years, but at some point down the line, there is going to be a door that opens for Steven Stamkos eventually. And that
really
it'll be a situation. Yeah, I honestly do. I think Steven kind of thinks that too. And I don't know if they ever Julian and him ever discussed that down the road, but I just think that, that one, there will be a need for Steven Stamkos in the room again, and he might not wear a C, but his voice, the been there, done thatness of what everything that he's brought, that one day, and even at 35, 36, he's still got a heck of a shot from that left circle. So I do think that down the road, if they, everything's got to work out a little bit in terms of, the money's obviously paramount, right? Right. How much can you get someone to take on of his salary, stuff like that. But, I still think that's, and maybe there's a romanticism to it in my own eyes, but I do think that, even from talking to Steven when he came down in earlier in the year, that there is some kind of notion of maybe he will be back, don't rule it out, I guess, and like I said, I don't think it's going to be, it's obviously not going to be today. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be this off season or next, but I think down the road that door will open for him. And, I'll say the other thing too is, there's a lot coming up with the salary cap in terms of, it's not no more of these nominal increases, and teams are going to be able to spend how they want to now, in order of the way that the cap is I think it's going up 22 million, I think, over the next 4 years. So, that's a huge increase in comparison to what it's been over the past, 5 years. So, like I said, there might be a little bit of romanticism to that, but I do think there's a little bit of reality to it as well over the next couple of years.
The hopeless romantic, the big use, Eduardo Encina, everybody. Let them know. Yeah, I mean, that would be fantastic. That'd be great. I think back to, it was great that they won the back-to-back cups. But what if the salary cap was able to go up the last couple of years? Are you able to hold on? Are you able to just keep McDonough this whole time? Are you able to keep a Gord, keep a Killorn, right? Keep a Palat? Like, what kind of situation does that entail? I think this is a very tricky 3-game road trip, Ed, where you have to start on time for all 3 of these games, including this one against Dallas, because Dallas has that firepower where if you blink, it's 2 or 3-0, and it's just going to be a steady uphill climb against one of the best goalies in all of hockey, in Jake Ottinger. What are some of the things that you're keeping an eye on as they take on Dallas, as they take on Utah, and they take on Vegas in these next 3 contests?
Yeah, I think that, I kind of wrote about this a little bit today in the Times. It's just kind of, what they showed the other day against Philadelphia is something that was, on paper, a really good game. 2-1, 2-0 loss, 2-0 win, a shutout win. But Cooper said that they played pretty slow. That was one thing that they, you look at the game plan, the game as it played out. There was a lot of, we know that this team can get a little bit too methodical at times, and I think that was kind of the case. A lot of passing, a lot of slow development in their own end in terms of entries in the zone. So I think the Cooper knows that, the players know that, and they know that that's not going to win in Dallas. That's not going to win in Vegas. That's probably not going to win in Utah. So I think that's a big focus is getting back to, if you can't get the entry, dump it in, rely on, your forecheck, and, chasing pucks, retrieving pucks. I know it sounds simple, but, when they've struggled with entries, that's kind of gotten them back to that basic game plan of all that's all based on the forecheck. So I think that's going to be something, you're going to need, like you said, you're going to need leads in those games. You're going to need situations where you're not really chasing games. And like I said, I think when you establish that forecheck, especially now that you have Gordon and Bjorkstrand, both of those guys are, you've seen that third line, whether, it's Nick Paul on it or not, that, those guys can hunt down pucks, they can retrieve shots. And, I think we've seen a lot from the defensemen in terms of not being necessarily hesitant to put those shots on net too. So with the notion that, it's not just going to be one and done. So I think that's a big thing going into this game and going into this series of 3 games. And it's different because you're not playing against those teams in the Eastern Division, Eastern Conference that are, you're in the hunt, you see them in the standings along with you. These are teams that are, for Dallas, they kind of already know who they're playing in the postseason. And, you really just kind of want to, but at the same time, they're in a great spot right now, but you can't get complacent about it. You've got to keep hunting points because obviously there's teams behind you. So, but again, this is the last time too, where they leave the East Coast time zone. So I'm sure they're seeing it as one of these situations where, hey, let's get the points that we can right now and, finish this thing out, because after this, there's a lot of, teams on the schedule that, again, you're fighting for, jostling for standings and positioning with. So, but again, I think that it's interesting to see Cooper kind of be pretty open about that, just saying that they played slow in that Philly game, even though they won, and, getting back to kind of, quick, but really basic kind of hockey in terms of, establish themselves in the offensive end and staying there. And, not, the turnovers are one thing, but I think if you're playing that kind of pace and that kind of game, the 5-on-5 will kind of, work itself out.
Ed, what have you made from the guys that participated in the 4 Nations? I said before, like, Yeah, they've gotten days off, but even Coop, like when we spoke to him the other night, like he looks like he needs a little bit. It's almost like you need a vacation from your vacation kind of thing. I think
Yeah.
those guys, they've been smart with it, but how have you been able, like, I don't know if I've noticed maybe a difference with Hedman. Obviously that one game was a little bit more the US Canada game, but what do you make of those guys and even Coop himself, and how they've like looked and how they've dealt with the Four Nations face off?
Yeah, so I think the Canada guys are probably a little bit different. Like I said, I think Coop was kind of riding on a little bit of a high, obviously, coming out of that. But yeah, then you hit kind of a wall, and he has given those guys days off, all five of them. And I think the one practice he gave those guys off, he gave himself a day off too. So he wasn't at least on the ice leading the team. So it affects everyone. I think that the one guys to really look at are kind of Hagel and Cirelli, because they play such a physical 200-foot game. And Cirelli has had such a great year in terms of improving, like just becoming a great two-way player. And we're talking about the goals and the points and everything like that, obviously there with him. And I've seen kind of a little bit of fatigue in his game a little bit. Hagel's got such a motor that, I think it's hit him too, but Brandon Hagel to me is just like, he's just got this extra level and, this, I don't know, it's kind of a hunger that he has to his game that I never really see him tired, but, I think it's hit him too a little bit, and even Braden Point a little bit too, meaning it's so tough, going from the Four Nations and all the fatigue level, all the intensity and then going into the season. So I do think it's had an effect on all those guys. I think that, it plays out in different ways, but again, like this team is so good and the organization is so good at really kind of knowing that and giving these guys time off, and maybe or even the group as a whole, you give them maybe it's a little bit lighter practice where you're just kind of looking, maybe you're focusing more on film and looking at things. I do notice that when you watch them practice wise, when they left for Dallas, they had a pretty tough practice, but I think that one was one that, like, usually before they fly out, it's maybe 30, 45 minutes tops, but they went, close to a full hour yesterday. And, but I think that was more of a focus on getting back to the pace. Let's not play slow. Let's play with a certain kind of pace, because we're going to need it on this road trip. But I think otherwise they're so good at just like knowing when guys kind of need one of those reset practices that might be just kind of based in details versus, going. And so I think that's one thing that, it's no joke that, when everyone does these polls and everything like that the Lightning are near the top in terms of like coaching staff, how they handle their players, stuff like that.
It's things like this.
A lot of things right. A lot of the things that we see, a lot of things we don't see. But I think, that this is a good example. There's no doubt that if we see it and we're noticing it, that maybe these guys are hitting a wall or getting into, hitting a grind there, that they've seen it much, much earlier than us. So, and that they're aware of it and they're doing so, a lot to do it. And then one thing that I do know that this team does is they're so good at managing their players' health. Like you said, it's something we do see sometimes. It's something that a lot behind the curtain. But like I said, there's no doubt that I think I've seen it, but I don't necessarily worry that it's going to affect them down the stretch, because, like you said, the organization is so good at monitoring that.
No doubt about it, man. What do you got right now there on TampaBay.com and the Tampa Bay Times, buddy? You there? There you go. Tampa Bay Times.
Yeah,
go ahead. TampaBay.com, Tampa Bay Times. What do you got? Give us some of your stories that you got up.
Yeah, so we're going out to Utah tomorrow. So we'll talk to number 98. He's got. I gotta talk to him at practice tomorrow. So working on that for a story for next week for when Utah comes down here. So that'll be exciting. I haven't been to Utah really, in a while. To Salt Lake, I've only been there once. So that'll be cool, just seeing, a new team, new arena, all that stuff. And then, one thing that we're kind of for the B column working on is just kind of, I asked Coop about, and he kind of said the same thing a lot, but I think you were in that session. We're basically about, what does it mean right now as you're in position to kind of decide your fate with right. Between winning the division and being in that second or third spot. It's what sucks about this is that you've got 3 great teams in the top of that division, and one of them is not going to make it out of the first round. So does that matter when you're fighting for these points? And it was his answer was pretty interesting. He was talking about how sometimes it's about the schedule that you can get, right? And obviously you probably get a different schedule when if you're playing Toronto than if you're playing Florida, and that's a league thing and stuff like that. So, but sometimes that matters. So just kind of a little bit talk about that and just kind of looking forward into, what matters and kind of, whether this schedule and this format and stuff like that really works, in the playoffs. Is it better 1 through 8? Is it better, when you have 2-3? You obviously establish some of these division rivalries like we've seen with Toronto and Florida, but in the long scheme of things, is that the right way to do it in the playoffs? So
it'd be nice to play some
we'll talk
other
about
teams.
that a little bit. Say it again, Jay.
It'd be nice to play some other teams, right, in that first round.
Yeah, as good as that rivalry is, as good as for the league and the state and everything like that, maybe it is, maybe it would be nice to play again, because, we talk about Dallas. I think Dallas, we talk about Dallas, and I think Dallas is locked into Colorado right now. And so imagine a Western Conference where either one of those teams is a great team, and there's no doubt both of those teams are Stanley Cup contenders, but one of them isn't going to make it out of the first round. And the same thing about the Atlantic Division with those 3 teams between, Florida, the Lightning, and Toronto. So, it's kind of a little bit of discussion about that and what Coop has thought about it. So, yeah, that's what we got going on for our Sunday Beat Column 2.
Eddie in the Yard on Twitter/X. I said it earlier with Joey Knight, and I'll say it here with Ed. It's so important to support local, man. Please, Tampa Bay Times, get that subscription today. Every little bit helps. You may not think it makes a difference, but it certainly does. Get it as a gift for a friend. It's important, man. Supporting local. We need to prop up our local journalists here in the Tampa Bay area. So please do what you can and support the Tampa Bay Times today. Ed, enjoy your weekend. Safe trip out to Utah, my friend, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it, man.
Throwing up the ones, my man. Ed Encina, Tampa Bay Times. Eddie in the Yard, not Eddie on the ice. Hanging out with the Manatees today. Really, really good stuff. Joins us every Thursday at 1:30. Again, subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times, especially stories like that. Nobody else is going to have that story. Going out to Utah, talking to Mikhail Sergachev before he returns next week. We've been waiting so long for that video from that return, right? Utah. I mean, God, to think about it, it's been so long. This entire season, like the season's almost over already, and they haven't played Utah one time, and then they play them there this weekend, and then they play them back home next week. So it'll be weird to see Mikhail Sergachev, and I'm sure he's going to try to do whatever he can to beat his former club. Let's give you some updates here before we hit the road, Jack. College basketball, Creighton, 13-point lead with 11:37 left in the second, 65-52 over Louisville. The Blue Jays, they're the 9 seed against the Cardinals, the 8 seed. We also have High Point and Purdue, the number 4 seed. Boilermakers lead by 10 right there. And then a 14-3 matchup, Montana, Wisconsin. The Badgers are up 18-13 there, so a 5-point lead with 11:11 left on the clock. SIUE. I love that. That's probably Cristiano Ronaldo's favorite school. They're the 16 seed against the number 1 seed, Houston Cougars, at 2:00. We've got Auburn at 2:50. Let's see what Bruce Pearl can do and the crew there as they take on Alabama State. And then the next game after that, Clemson and McNeese. 5-12 matchup right there. Ton more games today. Have fun. Have fun watching all these. It is going to be a phenomenal weekend when it comes to March Madness. This weekend is amazing. When it comes to golf, we have a 3-way lead at the top of the leaderboard there at the Valspar. Jacob Bridgman, Keith Mitchell, and Stefan Jaeger, the German. They all are 4 under. They're all done for the day. Ryan Fox actually, I guess it looks like he lost the stroke there. He was 4 under as well. Now he's at 3 under. Billy Horschel, the Gator, finished 2 under on the day, shot a 69. Jordan Spieth, did he eagle 1? Oh, I didn't see that. I don't know. It looks like he's 2 under through 1. So Jordan Spieth was the guy that I was gonna pick, but I listened to Bob Eric and picked Tommy Fleetwood instead. Ay, Dios mío. Seb Straka, Xander Schauffele also at 1 under. Where's my guy Tommy Fleetwood? All right, he finished 1 over on the day, as well as Sam Burns, the 2-time champ of the Valspar. Again, no show tomorrow here on the Jay Recher podcast because I will be at the Valspar tomorrow with the folks. If you are around 8th Green, come by and say hello. We'll be sitting there and just having a good time and enjoying it because this is one of my favorite weekends of the year. A big thank you to Joey Knight for joining us on the program, as well as Eddie Encina. It was a Tampa Bay Times filled day on the program. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms at JRetro. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Every little bit goes a very long way. Go USF tomorrow night. Go Bolts tonight. USF baseball and softball over the weekend. This is one of those fun nights here in the Tampa Bay areas. We're cheering on our teams. We're going to the Valspar. There's no better place to be than Tampa, Florida. I love you all. Thank you very much. Back on Monday at noon right here on the Jay Recher podcast. Everybody be well. Be safe.